Hey everybody, it's me, it's Mr. Banks. I just want you to know first and foremost that I missed the class. I miss being in that setting, but sometimes we have to move forward, on certain things. So anyway, what I wanted to do here for American history was to go ahead and talk about what class is going to be like here today for let's see, I got to think second, third, and fourth, and then on eighth hour on Friday. And we're just going to be touching up on a few important aspects that are going to be important. Now, first and foremost, it's always important to make sure that you check your announcement tab on a daily basis. What I will be doing is I will be making sure that that you have links that are going to be pertinent to class time, this, that, and the other. Also, be sure to check the assignments tabs. Okay. Currently, we got done with our day one here last week. We've been working on All Quiet on the Western Front Q&A, and I'm going to be touching base on just a few things here at the end, so we can go through that. You have a couple of assignments here coming up. Today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be spending a little bit of time here at the beginning, finishing through our notes, which if you go to the Crash Review World War I, you're going to find two PDFs. The first one being causes, the second one being World War I. We're going to be talking about the causes of World War I PDF here today that I'll be finishing up, and then also we'll be sure to check in, at this new assignment, which is it states Common Lit 1. It's the front lines, and don't fret, don't worry. We're going to be able to walk through this relatively easily. Okay, so I'm going to remove that, and bear with me as I do some screen sharing here right now. Okay, so let's see, click that. All right, so on let's see, I got to think here because we have to know what day it is, right? This is A day, and this is classes second, third, and fourth American history. What we finished up on Tuesday when we did our Zooms in class, we finished up the film All Quiet on the Western Front. Okay, so we should have that wrapped up. If for whatever reason you didn't get all those questions answered that are within All Quiet on the Western Front, be sure to double check. The link is up in the All Quiet on the Western Front assignment page in Canvas. Okay, that's important. I really wanted to focus on 16, 17, 25, 26, and 27 yesterday, and kind of move forward with that. Okay, the purpose throughout the past couple of classes has been to explore the German perspective of World War I. Okay, and what's important is when we look at that, prior to the film, your background knowledge of World War I really indicated a real focus on the American perspective. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you remember in our first couple days, we had a purpose to define what nationalism meant and those, various terms. And it's important to note that, most of our historical lessons are promoted in that sense. So that's not out of this world. So has your mind changed in regards to the Germany's perspective of World War I? I'm going to guess that it has, because anytime that you're either viewing a film or you're reading a book that discusses the other side of war or the other side of discontent, I'm going to guess that you might have had a soft spot, so to say, within those characters. Like, for example, Paul. Paul was the dreamer, right? He was the dreamer, but he was a natural born leader. And we would see that not only in the classroom, but we would see it a little bit later in the film as Cat. Okay, Cat was that fearless leader that always had that nose for food. So Paul would become that leader afterward. Okay, so it's important that we understood the purpose, explore the German perspective of World War I. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, many of your writing that I've read has stipulated that it's kind of the same perspective of the American side of things, right? War was tough. There were a lot of issues that each side had to deal with and resonate with. Okay, if you, in a couple of my classes, I believe they've done the personal response, but if you have not done that, please take the time here in just a few moments. So what images from the movie linger in your mind? And you're going to explain why these images made an impression on you. For example, when I look back at All Quiet on the Western Front, again, this will be a prime example. You can't use the exact example, but this will be a prime example. When I look back at the movie All Quiet on the Western Front, what really resonated with me was how many scenes there were of destruction, things blowing up, no man's land that happens to be in between the trenches, and the perils of war. And that's what really, made an impression on me throughout the film. If you look at the very beginning, you see the symbology of a church exploding at the beginning of the film, and then kind of each task kind of resonated to the next. So that would be what really resonates with me. Now I'm going to look at the second portion of this, right? So again, prior to the film knowledge, of World War I, it indicated a real focus on American perspective. How has your mind changed in regards to Germany's perspective of World War I anyway? Well, anytime that you personalize, whether it's one side or the other, it creates a little conflict. And in that conflict, you're going to resonate, these characters in differing ways. Like, for example, were the Germans in World War I so much different than that of the Americans when they would come in 1917, or that much different than the French or the English when they became involved in this conflict? Those are questions that you really have to ask yourself and examine. Okay, and that's pretty important. What I want you to do, I want my sub or anybody that's in the classroom right now to hit pause, and I want you to take a few minutes to discuss your perspectives, your personal response, and has your mind changed? Take about 5 minutes to discuss those parameters. All right, so I'm back. I'm going to guess that you have taken the time to go over those parameters with your sub or whoever's in my classroom, and I appreciate you doing that in my classroom because, to be honest with you, it's really killing me to do these things from home. But anyway, so part two today, we're really going to start hashing out some information. Now, I'm going to bring back my share screen again. And I'm going to go to the causes of World War I, the Great War link. Okay, if you remember from the other day, we discussed kind of how the nations became involved in World War I. So a little bit of this we'll just we'll review through. What's really awesome about this particular map is it gives you kind of a central focus on who would go on what side. Okay, and that's important. For example, the Triple Entente we see in this yellowish orange color, the United Kingdom, France, Russia, and then all these other nations that would be below. The United States would become involved in this allied side, but the original Triple Entente would be United Kingdom, France, and Russia. In pink here, you see the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and Turkey, which together make the Ottoman Empire. And it's important that you're able to draw from the differences between the Central Powers and the Allied powers. Okay, I did discuss the introduction of this, and the important things to note is anytime that you're getting instruction from me, or anytime that you're reading literature, it's always important to look through words that are going to be complex that you may not understand, and to create kind of your own glossary, so to say. And we've already talked about, nationalism, putting your nation before yourself. We understand that, World War I was really a push of nationalism, a push for, geographic differences in Europe itself. We also look at economic and imperial competition. The fear of war prompted military alliances and an arms race, which further escalated the tension, contributing to the outbreak of war. That's important too. Imperial competition, or imperialism, the act of empire building. And in the early 1900s, there's a lot of empires that are fighting over different lands throughout the world, whether it's Africa, whether it's Southeast Asia, or this, that, and the other. So it's important to understand those things. And again, the first couple slides here today will be a little bit of review. Nationalism. We understand that nationalism posed problems in certain areas of the world. For example, in the third portion of this slide, nationalism posed a problem for Austria-Hungary and the Balkans, areas comprised of many conflicting national groups, because after the Napoleonic Wars, after the 100 Years' War in Europe, what we're going to see is the group that win, they're going to map out a new Europe. And anytime that you put certain areas together, you're going to have conflict. I would, in a current, aspect that would draw to that, I would look at the Middle East. Okay, like for example, the Iraq War. We had an issue breaking up Iraq in general after the war because there's three different Muslim factions. You have the Sunni, the Shia, and the Kurds. And if we were to just lump them together, there's going to be some ethnic conflict that's going to stew. And the nationalism did pose a problem in those areas. Not much of a problem in Germany, in England, in France, because they were trying to push their form of empire or imperialism in that aspect later on. This is pretty deep here. You look at the battle prior to World War I in whether it's the Middle East with the breaking of the Ottoman Empire, whether it's the Balkans. You got Russia fighting for control in that area. So there was a definite need, and a lot of time you look at empire building, you look at the need for like raw materials, natural resources, and things like that. So our biggest purpose the other day, and I'll continue to do that, was what were the causes of World War I? So the first one is nationalism. Okay, be sure that you have that written down as one. The second one would be imperialism. So we have nationalism and imperialism as two key ingredients in the main cause of World War I. There's going to be four different sects that's going to cause that, and I'll discuss that in a little bit of detail. And I know that this is a little bit of review, but this is good for all of us when we look at World War I. Okay, there was also an arms race, which would be the third cause of World War I that's really going to resonate. You look at Germany prior to World War I; they are the most powerful nation on the planet. You could compare it today with maybe the United States, China, Russia. I mean, Germany was the big kid on the block, so to say, and they started building up arms, as did other European nations. And anytime that you have an arms race, I mean, not always, but most of the time when you have an arms race, you're eventually going to use those weapons, and that's what was going to take place. Think of World War I as a balloon that you've blown up to the max and it's getting ready to pop. That's the tone of the air during this time period. So, more on the arms race that would be added to that. Armies and navies were greatly expanded. Okay, the standing armies of France and Germany doubled in size between 1870 and 1914. Naval expansion was also extremely competitive, particularly between Germany and Great Britain. By 1889, the British had established the principle that in order to maintain naval superiority in the event of war, they would have to have a navy 2.5 times as large as the second largest army. Fighting was much different during that time period. It was like the more troops that you had, the better off you're going to be. But what really caused the war is number 4 in the causes of World War I, is the assassination in Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, his pregnant wife, they're strolling through Sarajevo, Bosnia, and a Serbian nationalist belonging to the Black Hand assassinated them. And this is going to create a lot of backlash, things like that. Immediately following the assassination, Germany says, "Hey, Austria-Hungary, you're a sister country. We're gonna sign a blank check. If you want to declare war or whatever you want to do, we have your back." And this is when things really, it put a lot of pressure out there. They would pressure Austria-Hungary to declare war on Serbia, but France, being friends of Russia, is going to strengthen its backing of Russia because Russia had a Serbia connection, okay, and so did France. France had a Russian connection, so this is where it's going to cause, a lot of issues and turmoil. Convinced that the Serbian government had conspired against him, Austria-Hungary issued Serbia an unacceptable ultimatum, basically saying, "Hey, you're done. We're going to take over. You're going to grant us total reconciliation in your country, and you cease to exist." Well, they weren't going to do that. So you had all these falling dominoes. Everybody was unsatisfied. And in a period of a month, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Russia ordered a partial mobilization, which is portions of troops, to the area alongside Austria-Hungary in support of Serbia, which again escalated into a general mobilization, which would be more troops. It would be more of a conflict that's going to cause the war itself. The Germans threatened war on July 31st if the Russians did not demobilize or take their troops away from the side. Upon being asked by Germany what it would do in the event of a Russo-German war, France responded that it would act on its own interests, and they mobilized on the other front. And then 2 days later, so on August 1st, Germany declared war on Russia, and 2 days later on France. And then what Germany does is they invade Belgium in order to attack France on two sides of things. And this would violate Belgium's official neutrality act. Well, Britain was friends with Belgium, so they declared war on Germany, and then World War I had officially began. Okay, it had started. So when you look back at the timeline of events, Archduke Franz Ferdinand assassinated. Within 30 days, Europe was involved at the start of one of the most bloodiest conflicts of the 1900s. Okay, a couple of important aspects of this: the Battle of Frontiers. 27,000 French soldiers died on one single day of an offensive thrust east of Paris toward the German borders. German army, led by Erich Ludendorff and Paul von Hindenburg, achieves the greatest victory of the war early on in the war on the Eastern Front against Russia in the Battle of Tannenberg. Those were two pretty wild battles at the beginning. The first Battle of the Marne, it would happen in early 1915. It halts the German invasion in France, and then you're going to have what we call trench warfare. And we're going to be talking about those things here in just a little bit. So we look at 1915, okay? War becomes total war because Germany's actually going to fly over England and bomb them. If you look at the pictures here, you can see they were called Zeppelins. I kind of refer them to, it would look like, 100 big Goodyear blimps flying over, dropping bombs on your country. It would have been a sight to see nonetheless. But you can see the picture here. That's the picture of the Natural History Museum in England. And it really became total war in 1915. I have up there World War I, 1915, America. And there's a question mark there. Well, the United States was really trying to figure out, which side was wrong, which side was right, or which side's going to win. And this is where it gets really interesting. There were a lot of industrialists that reached out. They started selling armaments to England and supplies, to France and England, the Allies, also Russia, and in some terms even the Germans early on. And this caused a lot of tension, this, that, and the other. February 4th, Germany would declare a submarine blockade of Great Britain. They said that any ship approaching England is considered a legitimate target. Well, this is going to cause problems for the United States with trade with Europe. And, there was a ship. It was called the Lusitania. And we're going to talk about the Lusitanian probably next week, as we dig a little bit further into World War I. And it would be the Lusitanian incident that would be one of the main benefactors of bringing the United States into World War I on the side of the Allies. So this caused a lot of problem. What I have here is trench warfare. Trench warfare actually started June 1st, 1916. In the very first day of trench warfare for the Brits, 60,000 young men would die on the first day. 1.2 million Brits would die in a total of 3 years fighting from trench to trench. Now, if you remember All Quiet on the Western Front, you got to see the trenches. You got to see no man's land, which is, the place in the middle where they would blow their whistle and people would go off to fight, and there would be this fighting back and forth. It's interesting, to say the least, that only 7 miles of land changed hands in this war that started in 1914 and wouldn't end until 4 years later. No man's land. The Ypres salient. If we look at that, the Ypres salient would be the French side of the trenches. Okay, that's that term. We have a few pictures here that we can look at. It's interesting in these maps. You can see Ypres in this area, and where, you know, you see Belgium, where the Germans were trying to go into that area, and you can see the issues, right? Well, anyway, if you look here, there in black, there's a Peckham mine under a farmhouse. There's 20,000-pound bomb that's still there, unexploded. There's a 50,000-pound mine under La Basse-Cour farm, still unexploded. It's just crazy to think that there were that many bombs and mines that are actually still there. 19 mines with 930,000 pounds exploded under the German trenches, you know, during this time period. The noise was heard in England. 6 of those still remain undetonated. Think about that. The noise were heard in England. It would be like a bomb going off in maybe Des Moines, Iowa, and for us to be able to hear that here in Donaldson, Iowa. It's crazy, you know, to say the least. So really, why didn't the United States become involved right away? Well, Americans questioned neutrality, and there was an election year that's going to take place in 1916 that kept us out of war with Woodrow Wilson during that time period. So anyway, what kept us out of war? The biggest thing was the melting pot of the United States. There were 2.3 million German immigrants in the United States in 1914, 8.6% of the population. So you can only imagine that there would be a little bit of, panic as to which side you're going to be fighting on. So which side would we choose was one. The German blockade of England, it made things a little bit easier, you know, for us to choose a side, but it strained trade with the Allies. Ultimately, the sinking of the Lusitanian. In 1915, this British passenger liner, the Lusitanian, was sunk by German submarine, killing 128 Americans and further heightening tensions. Well, the United States stated, hey, you know, they were just passengers. They were going to England. You know, we didn't have any bombs or weapons in there, but obviously we had a lot of weapons that were a part of that explosion. Okay. So the Lusitanian would definitely bring in the United States. It's going to bring a little bit more interest as to, you know, where we're at. Ultimately, the Zimmerman note would also in 1917 happen early January. It was a note that was written to Mexico from a German minister saying, hey, if you guys, come on the side of the Central Powers and you keep the United States out of the conflict, then you can get, New Mexico, Texas, Arizona back. This ultimately put us into a situation where, hey, you know, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And not to mention that the 1916 election was over, and then we were off to war, which is really, it's quite striking, to say the least, when we look at World War I in general and how the United States became involved. Now, today we're not going to be focusing necessarily on the end of World War I. Excuse me. I will be carrying that here a little bit later. But I do want to share my screen, and you're going to be taking the rest of your time here today to work on. Oops, I have the wrong one. Okay, I got to make sure that I have the right one here. You're going to be taking the time today to work on another assignment, and this is Common Lit 1 Front Lines. I want you to really focus and try hard on this. You're going to be going to commonlit.org. The assignment's called Front Lines. And I want you to read through it. I want you to take notes, annotated notes, and then there's going to be like 4 multiple choice questions and 2 writing questions. And I really want you to focus on graces as a tool to answer those questions, and it'll be worth 25 points. And please try to upload that before the end of the hour. Okay, that's all I have for American history. Let's see, this is block A, block B, and this should finish us up for the week. This is Mr. Banks signing out. I miss you all. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, cbanks@centrallee.org. Thank you.